Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover a secret that changes everything? In today's real-life story, we follow Emma, who thought she and her partner, Daniel, had a perfect life together. They had plans, dreams, and savings carefully set aside for the future. But one shocking discovery turns her world upside down. Emma finds out that Daniel has secretly spent their entire family savings on a risky investment that failed. The betrayal is not just about money, it's about trust, love, and honesty in a relationship. How will Emma confront this secret debt? Will their relationship survive the shock, the lies, and the anger? This story is perfect for anyone learning English because it includes real-life conversations, emotional vocabulary, and expressions you can use in everyday life. Listen carefully, repeat the phrases, and try to understand the feelings behind every word. By the end, you'll not only improve your English listening and speaking skills, but also learn how people deal with challenges in relationships and finances. Get ready for a dramatic, emotional, and educational journey in The Secret Debt, real-life story to learn English. Make sure to pay attention to the dialogues. They are full of practical English you can use in your daily conversations.
Emma had always believed that life with Daniel was perfect. They had built a routine that felt safe and happy. Every morning, they drank coffee together in the sunlit kitchen, talking quietly about their plans for the week. Weekends were reserved for walks in the park, visiting friends, or watching movies on the couch. Friends often told Emma how lucky she was, and she had believed it. Their apartment was cozy, their jobs stable, and their future seemed secure. Money had never been a worry. Emma and Daniel had carefully saved for years, keeping their family savings in a joint account. The plan had always been simple: a future home, a small vacation every year, and a comfortable life without stress. Emma had never thought too deeply about the details of their finances. She trusted Daniel completely. She believed that they were partners in every sense, sharing everything equally. But that sense of security was about to shatter. One ordinary afternoon, Emma sat at the dining table with her laptop open, ready to pay for a small home renovation project. She typed in the bank website, expecting to see their familiar balance. But her eyes froze on the screen. The number staring back at her was far lower than it should have been. At first, she assumed it was a mistake, perhaps a bank error or a pending payment. But as she checked again, the truth became impossible to ignore. Her heart raced, and a cold feeling spread through her chest. Something was very wrong. The careful life she had trusted was not what it seemed. The savings she thought were safe, the money that represented years of planning and security, were gone. Or at least a large portion of them were missing. Emma closed her laptop slowly, trying to breathe, trying to think. Questions swirled in her mind. How could this happen? Why hadn't Daniel told her? What had he done with their money? The perfect life they had built together was starting to feel like a fragile illusion. Emma knew that when Daniel came home, nothing would ever be the same.
The next few days were unbearable for Emma. The thought of the missing money haunted her every waking moment. She kept replaying the numbers she had seen in the bank account, trying to convince herself that it was a mistake. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Something had gone terribly wrong, and the nagging feeling in her chest would not let her ignore it. Emma began to pay closer attention to the small details around their home. Bills she had never noticed before suddenly seemed important. Receipts tucked into drawers, emails marked as investment updates, and subtle mentions in Daniel's casual conversation now took on a new weight. Every unexplained expense and every late-night text from the bank became a clue in a puzzle she didn't want to solve but had no choice but to. She remembered a conversation from months ago, a passing remark from Daniel about a great opportunity he didn't want to tell her about yet. At the time, she had smiled and nodded, thinking it was just another minor business decision. Now, that remark echoed in her mind, heavy and full of warning. Emma felt a tight knot in her stomach. She had trusted him completely, and yet something had been kept from her. One evening, as Daniel came home from work, Emma decided she could no longer avoid the question that had been building inside her. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. "Daniel, can we talk about the bank account?" she asked. Daniel's face shifted immediately, a flicker of unease crossing his features. He nodded, hesitant, and followed her to the living room. Emma didn't speak right away. She let the silence stretch, hoping he would offer an explanation. When he finally opened his mouth, it was a small, careful voice. I thought I could handle it before you noticed," he said. Emma felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. That single sentence confirmed her worst fear. Something had gone wrong, and Daniel had kept it hidden, believing he could fix it alone. She sank into the couch, trying to process the weight of what she had just learned. The life she had trusted, the careful plans for the future, suddenly felt uncertain. Emma realized that the problem was bigger than just missing money. It was about trust, honesty, and the foundation of their relationship. She knew that before she could think about the finances, she had to confront the truth. For the first time in months, she felt the sharp sting of fear, not just for their money, but for the life she thought she had built. Emma understood one thing clearly: nothing would be the same after this discovery. Emma couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the bank balance again, the numbers glaring back at her like a warning. The trust she had taken for granted felt fragile, like a glass about to shatter. She knew she couldn't ignore it any longer. If she wanted to understand what had happened, she would have to investigate on her own. The next morning, Emma began carefully going through their documents. She opened drawers, sifted through piles of papers, and checked old emails. Each receipt, each transaction, each bank alert became a small clue. It was exhausting, and at times she felt a wave of nausea, realizing how much Daniel had hidden. But Emma pressed on, determined to find the truth. She discovered transfers to unfamiliar accounts, payments labeled vaguely, and investment statements she had never seen before. The picture was becoming clearer and darker. Daniel had not only spent a significant portion of their savings, but he had also put it into a high-risk investment that had failed. The amount lost was enough to derail many of their future plans, including the home renovation and vacation they had been dreaming about. Emma sat back in her chair, hands trembling slightly. The weight of what she had uncovered pressed down on her. She had imagined worst-case scenarios before, but seeing the reality spelled out in numbers and documents made it unbearable. She felt a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. How could someone she loved so much hide something so monumental? When Daniel returned home that evening, Emma was ready. She had compiled the evidence, the statements, and the transfers. "I've looked through everything," she said quietly, holding up the papers. "We need to talk." Daniel's face fell. He avoided her gaze, fidgeting with his hands. For a moment, the room was heavy with silence. The kind of silence that only comes when trust is broken and the truth can no longer be ignored. He finally muttered, I thought I could fix it before you found out." Emma's chest tightened. That single sentence, simple as it was, carried months of deception. She realized that the battle ahead would not only be about recovering the lost money, but about confronting the secrecy, rebuilding trust, and deciding whether their relationship could survive this. That night, Emma lay awake again, thinking about the future. One thing was certain. The world she had known, the life she had believed was safe and secure, was gone. The journey to uncover the full extent of Daniel's secret debt had only just begun, and she knew the confrontation ahead would change everything. The following evening, Emma could no longer avoid it. The weight of the secret, the missing money, and the months of deception pressed down on her like a storm cloud. She had spent days gathering evidence, organizing statements, and trying to prepare herself emotionally. But no amount of preparation could make the confrontation easy. Daniel walked in from work, tired but unaware of the storm waiting for him. Emma stood in the living room, papers in hand, heart pounding. The room, which had once felt warm and safe, now seemed heavy and tense. Every small sound, his footsteps, a rustle of his jacket, made her pulse quicken. "I've gone through everything," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The money, it's gone." "Where did it go, Daniel?" Daniel froze, his face pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it, searching for words. Finally, he spoke in a low voice. "I thought I could fix it before you noticed." Emma's chest tightened. She had expected excuses, but hearing them made her stomach turn. The reality was undeniable. The money they had saved for years was lost, and the trust she had placed in him had been broken. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay composed. "You didn't just lose money," she said quietly. "You kept it from me. All this time I trusted you completely, and you lied." Daniel looked down, ashamed, unable to meet her eyes. He tried to explain, talking about his plans, his hopes to recover the investment, and his fear of worrying her. But Emma barely heard the words. She wasn't listening to explanations anymore. She was listening to the truth that had been revealed through numbers and hidden statements. For hours, they sat in the living room. Emma laid out the bank statements, the transfers, and the investment reports. Daniel admitted each one, answering her questions as honestly as he could. Yet honesty now came too late. Emma felt a deep ache, a mix of anger, sadness, and disappointment that was hard to describe. By the time the conversation ended, the room was quiet, heavy with realization. Emma understood something important. The confrontation wasn't just about money. It was about trust, transparency, and the foundation of their life together. Daniel's mistakes could be addressed, maybe even partially repaired, but the secrecy and betrayal were scars that would take much longer to heal. As she lay awake that night, Emma thought about their future. She knew the road ahead would be difficult. Conversations about money, trust, and honesty would dominate their days. But she also knew that avoiding the problem was no longer an option. The confrontation had changed everything. The days after the confrontation were some of the hardest Emma had ever faced. Every corner of their apartment seemed to remind her of the betrayal. The cozy living room, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like a museum of broken trust. Each item, the coffee mugs they had shared, the framed photos of vacations, the little notes on the fridge, carried an echo of a life that felt stolen. Emma tried to focus on her daily routine, but her mind kept returning to the missing savings and the months of secrecy. The anger simmered inside her, hot and relentless. She thought about all the plans they had made together, the home renovation, the dream vacation, the small comforts they had saved for over the years, and realized they had been built on a foundation of lies. It wasn't just the money that hurt, it was the betrayal, the fact that someone she loved so deeply could hide such a monumental truth. She replayed moments from the past months, trying to see if there had been any signs she had missed. Every unexplained expense, every sudden comment about financial opportunities now seemed like a red flag she had ignored. Emma found herself wrestling with conflicting emotions. Part of her still loved Daniel, the man she had shared her life with, but another part felt an intense desire to protect herself. She realized that love alone could not erase the impact of deception. She needed time, space, and clarity. Friends and family noticed her distance. Some offered support, others advice. Many warned her about forgiveness and caution. She listened to them all, but knew that the decision could not be rushed. The trust that had been broken couldn't be rebuilt overnight. Every step forward would require honesty, transparency, and effort from both of them. Daniel tried to reach out, to apologize, to explain, but Emma kept a polite distance. She wanted to hear him, but only when she was ready. She needed to process her own feelings first, to confront the depth of her anger and the pain of betrayal. In quiet moments, she reflected on her life before the secret debt. She realized how much she had relied on the stability of their relationship, how much she had assumed that trust was unbreakable. Now she understood that trust was fragile and that it demanded attention, communication, and accountability. Emma didn't yet know what the future would hold. She didn't know if the relationship could survive the betrayal or if the love they had shared would be enough to overcome it. But she knew one thing clearly. She would not ignore her feelings, and she would not allow the deception to define her life. The anger, though painful, was also a guide. It showed her boundaries, highlighted what was unacceptable, and prepared her for the difficult decisions ahead. Emma understood that the road to healing would be long, but for the first time since discovering the secret debt, she felt a flicker of clarity amidst the turmoil. Emma knew she couldn't face everything alone. The weight of Daniel's secret debt and the months of deception pressed down on her, leaving her restless and exhausted. She realized that she needed perspective from people she trusted who could help her make sense of the chaos and guide her through the uncertainty. Over the next few days, she reached out to a few close friends. She didn't share every detail at first, only enough to explain the situation. The missing savings, the failed investment, and the betrayal that had shaken her sense of security. Her friends listened patiently, offering support and insights she hadn't considered. Some told her to forgive, emphasizing that people make mistakes and that Daniel's remorse might be genuine. They reminded her of the love they had shared and encouraged her to think about the long-term possibilities of rebuilding the relationship. Others, however, urged caution. They warned her not to ignore the betrayal, to protect herself, and to consider the possibility that some trust could never be restored. Emma absorbed all of it, weighing each piece of advice against her own feelings. She realized that no one could make the decision for her. The choice was hers alone, whether to try and rebuild what had been broken or to step back and protect herself from further hurt. She also sought professional advice, reaching out to a financial counselor. The counselor helped her understand the reality of the lost savings and guided her through practical steps to stabilize their finances. It was a relief to have a clear plan, even as the emotional pain lingered. Emma learned that recovery would require both emotional and practical effort, and that she couldn't rush either. Through these conversations, Emma began to understand something crucial. Healing would not come from ignoring the betrayal or pretending it didn't happen. It would come from confronting the truth, setting boundaries, and making deliberate choices about the future. Even as she listened to advice, she felt the weight of responsibility. Daniel had made the mistakes, but she had to navigate the aftermath. She realized that moving forward would require courage, patience, and careful thought. Every decision would matter, and she would have to be both firm and fair. By the end of the week, Emma felt a small but significant shift. The storm of emotions was still there, but now she had a path forward. She could think clearly, plan her next steps, and consider how, or if, Daniel could regain her trust. For the first time since discovering the secret debt, she felt that she might survive this betrayal and reclaim control of her life. Emma woke up with a heavy heart. The confrontation, the anger, the advice from friends, it had all left her exhausted. But exhaustion gave way to clarity. She could no longer live in denial. The secret debt was real and the consequences were unavoidable. It was time to face reality. The first step was practical. Emma and Daniel sat down together, not in heated argument, but with a shared sense of urgency. They reviewed their finances carefully, listing every account, every outstanding bill, and every expense. The numbers were sobering. Months of secrecy had left them with far less than they had imagined. Some dreams would have to be postponed, vacations canceled, and lifestyle choices reevaluated. It was difficult for Emma to separate her emotions from the reality. She felt anger, disappointment, and sadness all at once. Yet she also knew that ignoring the situation would only make it worse. She forced herself to stay focused, taking one step at a time, writing down budgets, and setting realistic goals. Daniel, for his part, seemed to understand the depth of his mistake. He took responsibility for every decision he had made, admitting where he had gone wrong and promising to be fully transparent moving forward. Emma listened, noting that words alone were not enough. Actions would have to prove his commitment to honesty and partnership. Facing reality also meant confronting the social and emotional impact of the debt. Friends who had once relied on their generosity would no longer see the same lifestyle. Plans with family had to be reconsidered. Even the small pleasures, dinners out, spontaneous shopping trips, were now carefully measured against the new financial reality. Despite the difficulty, Emma felt a strange sense of empowerment. Confronting the truth allowed her to regain some control over her life. She realized that while the money was lost, her ability to make decisions and set boundaries was still hers. She could navigate this crisis with thoughtfulness, planning, and clear priorities. As the days passed, Emma and Daniel worked together to reorganize their life. It wasn't easy. Old habits had to change, new rules had to be followed, and trust had to be rebuilt step by step. Every conversation about finances was careful, every decision deliberate. The process was slow and often uncomfortable, but it was necessary. By the end of the week, Emma began to see the first signs of progress. They had a plan, a structure, and an understanding of the mistakes that had led them here. Facing reality was painful, but it was also liberating. She had acknowledged the problem, and now she could start to rebuild both their finances and, cautiously, their relationship. The days turned into weeks, and Emma began to notice a small shift. The anger and betrayal were still there, like shadows that lingered in the corners of her mind, but the sharpness had dulled slightly. She realized that holding on to resentment alone would not help her move forward. Forgiveness wouldn't come all at once, but small steps could begin the process of healing. Emma and Daniel started attending financial counseling together. At first, the sessions were awkward, filled with tension and careful explanations, but slowly the professional guidance helped them communicate without blame. They learned to talk openly about money, investments, and future plans. Every conversation about finances became a small act of rebuilding trust. Beyond the numbers, Emma noticed changes in Daniel's behavior. He was more transparent, sharing every detail about his actions, decisions, and intentions. He no longer made promises he couldn't keep, and he actively sought Emma's input on decisions that affected them both. For the first time since the secret debt was revealed, she felt a glimmer of hope that he was genuinely committed to repairing the damage. Emma also took time for herself. She journaled, reflected, and allowed herself to feel every emotion without judgment. She understood that forgiveness did not mean forgetting, nor did it mean excusing the betrayal. It meant acknowledging the past, accepting the truth, and deciding how to proceed with caution and awareness. Small acts of reconciliation helped too. Daniel would make gestures to show his commitment, preparing meals, helping with errands, or simply listening when Emma needed to speak. These gestures weren't grand, but they were consistent, and consistency was more important than words. Emma began to see that forgiveness was less about him proving he was perfect and more about her reclaiming peace and agency in the relationship. By the end of the month, Emma felt cautiously optimistic. She still had moments of doubt and anger, but they no longer consumed her. She realized that forgiveness was a process, not a single event. Each day brought opportunities to rebuild trust, strengthen communication, and make choices that honored both her feelings and the reality of their situation. Emma understood that the road ahead would be long. Healing a relationship after betrayal required patience, effort, and vulnerability. But for the first time since discovering the secret debt, she believed that their relationship might survive, not because it was perfect, but because they were willing to work through the challenges together.
Months had passed since the discovery of the secret debt, and life had slowly begun to find a new rhythm. Emma and Daniel had faced the hard truths, confronted their mistakes, and navigated the aftermath with careful thought. The process had been painful, but it had also been filled with lessons that neither of them would ever forget. Emma realized that trust was fragile and easily broken, but it could also be rebuilt if both people were willing to take responsibility and communicate openly. She had learned that love alone was not enough to sustain a relationship. Honesty, transparency, and shared accountability were equally vital. Secrets, even with the best intentions, could erode the strongest bonds. Daniel, too, had learned the weight of his actions. The failed investment and the hidden debt were not just financial mistakes. They were lessons in humility, responsibility, and empathy. He understood the importance of involving Emma in decisions, being honest even when the truth was uncomfortable, and never taking trust for granted again. Together, they discovered that rebuilding a life after betrayal required more than apologies. It required active effort, patience, and a willingness to change patterns that had caused harm. They set clear boundaries, created detailed financial plans, and committed to regular, honest conversations. Every small action became a step toward stability and mutual respect. Emma also reflected on her own growth. She had learned to trust her instincts, to seek guidance when needed, and to set boundaries without guilt. She realized that her strength was not diminished by betrayal. It was sharpened. She could face challenges, make difficult decisions, and navigate uncertainty with resilience. The couple began to notice subtle but meaningful changes in their relationship. Arguments were fewer, conversations were deeper, and moments of connection felt more intentional. The lessons from the secret debt became a guide for a healthier, more thoughtful partnership. As Emma looked back on the months of turmoil, she understood that the crisis had not just tested their relationship, it had transformed it. The pain and betrayal had revealed vulnerabilities, but also opportunities for growth. They had learned that mistakes could be overcome, that forgiveness was a journey, and that a relationship built on honesty and accountability could survive even the harshest challenges. Emma realized that life was not about avoiding mistakes or betrayal. It was about how one responded to them, how lessons were learned, and how relationships were rebuilt with intention and care. The months following the discovery of the secret debt had changed Emma and Daniel in ways they could never have imagined. The anger, betrayal, and uncertainty had gradually given way to understanding, accountability, and a cautious sense of hope. Life was no longer the same, but in many ways it was beginning to feel real again. Emma had learned to navigate her emotions with patience and clarity. She still carried the memory of the betrayal, but she no longer let it define every thought or decision. Instead, she focused on what could be rebuilt: trust, communication, and a shared vision for the future. Every day became an opportunity to make choices that honored both her needs and the reality of their circumstances. Daniel, having faced the consequences of his secrecy, approached their relationship with humility and sincerity. He no longer took trust for granted. Every action, no matter how small, was a step toward proving his commitment to honesty and partnership. He understood that rebuilding a life together required consistent effort, not just words. Together, they faced the practical challenges of their finances. They reorganized their budget,
adjusted their goals, and made careful plans for the future. Vacations were postponed, luxuries were reconsidered, and even everyday expenses were evaluated with thoughtfulness. While the lost savings could never be fully recovered, the experience had taught them resilience and responsibility. Beyond money, they focused on emotional growth. Conversations were open and deliberate, every decision shared. They learned to listen without judgment, to communicate even when it was uncomfortable, and to approach problems as a team rather than as individuals. The relationship was not perfect, but it was stronger in ways that mattered most. Emma reflected on what she had learned. Life was unpredictable, and trust could be broken in an instant. But she had also discovered that healing was possible, that forgiveness could be earned, and that growth often comes from the hardest challenges. She realized that a relationship built on honesty, transparency, and mutual respect could survive even the deepest crises. As she looked at Daniel one evening, she felt a quiet sense of hope. The secret debt had tested them, shaken their foundation, and revealed vulnerabilities, but it had also shown them the strength of commitment, the power of reflection, and the importance of shared responsibility. They were moving forward, not back to the life they had imagined, but toward a future that was real, deliberate, and grounded in trust. Emma understood one final truth. Life would always have challenges, mistakes, and setbacks, but with honesty, patience, and effort, it was possible to rebuild, to forgive, and to grow stronger together. The secret debt had been a painful lesson, but it had also been a turning point, one that would shape the rest of their lives. Thank you for listening to The Secret Debt, real-life story to learn English. We've followed Emma's journey from shock and betrayal to understanding, forgiveness, and rebuilding trust. Stories like this help you learn English naturally through real-life situations, emotional vocabulary, and practical expressions you can use every day. Remember, listening carefully to the narrative and repeating key phrases can improve your English speaking, listening, and comprehension skills. Pay attention to words describing emotions, decisions, and relationships. They are some of the most useful phrases for real-life conversations. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life English learning stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story designed to help you improve your English while enjoying engaging, dramatic, and educational content. Leave a comment and tell us, how would you react if you discovered a secret like Emma did? We love reading your thoughts, and it's a great way to practice writing in English. Thank you again for listening. Keep practicing, keep learning, and remember, every story is an opportunity to grow your English skills while exploring real-life experiences. See you in the next story.